A sea of salt, sucked dry by the Kalahari sun. These are the thirsty lands of Magadi-Gadi in Botswana. Once, long ago, this was one of the greatest lakes in Africa. Today, it's just a ghost lake, tormented by dust devils and shunned by all living things. Yet, every so often, maybe only once in every 10 years, these harsh soda flats, which cover some 4,000 square miles, are transformed. And at night, an unearthly music falls from the sky, bringing the lost lake back to life. In these years of sudden floods, flamingos from thousands of miles away fly in to breed. In weeks to come, some of their chicks will set out on another journey, on which they will not fly, but walk. There is a mystery here. Nobody knows how flamingos time their arrival to meet the flood at this desolate place, or even where they come from. But some instinct guides them through the night. By daybreak, they are arriving in their tens of thousands. The migration includes both lesser and greater flamingos. Lesser flamingos have darker bills and brighter feathers than their larger, paler cousins. Hungry after their long journey, both species feed amicably together. Although the soda pans are flooded for thousands of square miles, the edges are shallow, allowing the birds to sift the saline waters for algae and brine shrimps brought to life by the rains. Within days of arrival, the greater flamingos head for this island, far from the shore, in the south of the pan. Here they will breed after a strict formal courtship, signalling their intentions with turning heads and flashing wings. Now begins a race against time. They must pair off, nest and raise their young before the waters dry up. They quarrel over nesting sites. After the female has laid her single egg, the male takes turns with her to sit on the nest. There is no shade, and every day is hotter than the last. The shoreline has already begun to recede as the first chicks appear. Not all the chicks emerge at once. While the first to hatch are busy getting into their stride, some adults are still seeking a mate. The result is a multitude of chicks of very different sizes. The last birds to breed find their nest surrounded by throngs of jostling youngsters. These chicks hungrily search for pieces of eggshell. The shells, rich in calcium, are an essential addition to their diet. Lost in a forest of legs, this tiny chick must be protected by its parent if it is to avoid being trampled. Despite the clamour, each chick can recognize its parent's call. This means the adults can fly off to feed, knowing instinctively that when they return, the chicks will respond to their calls only, and they will be able to find them in the crowd. In the late afternoon, parties of adults begin to stream home from their feeding grounds in the deeper waters to the north. Excitement builds among the chicks as feeding time approaches. Some, the waiting is over. One by one, each chick is reunited with its parent. Adults continue to fly in through the night to feed their hungry chicks. The young, too, are at their most active in the hours after dark. Food becomes energy, to be used for learning the precarious art of walking on stilts. The first hatched chicks are still being fed, but they're almost ready to fledge. Soon they will be able to join the dawn flights to the feeding grounds. There, the newly fledged chicks feed for themselves and become independent. Meanwhile, on the island, the remaining chicks are becoming increasingly restless. They begin bunching together to form large groups, creches. A number of different species of birds do this. It's a way of protecting themselves. There's safety in numbers. Unlike other African breeding areas, the Magadi-Gadi pans have virtually no resident predators, but the chicks' urge to form creches is still strong. A large number of chicks from the overcrowded colony form a distinct group and prepare to leave the densely packed island. Excitement rises as the group gets bigger. Older flamingos encourage the momentum. The tiny birds prepare to make a journey of several miles to a new home. By dividing into smaller groups like these, the colony has greatly increased its chance of survival. As if at a given signal, they stream away. The youngest chicks are surrounded by older birds. They will soon fledge and join the others in the north. Here, the water is deeper and still fresh enough to hold fish and support pelicans. But while the greater flamingos find sanctuary in the north, the lesser flamingos in the south have only now started to breed. The water here is rapidly evaporating in the searing heat. Only a thin blue skin remains. Islands of soda crust emerge like blisters as the lake bed is exposed. Far out on the drying lake bed, hidden from the shoreline by the heat haze, more than 100,000 lesser flamingos are starting to breed. Each pair builds a huge nest of mud and soda. These raised mounds protect the eggs from the wind-blown water and keep them above the pan's scorching surface. Magnificent in their full breeding plumage, and with feathers fluffed out in territorial display, the birds shift from one leg to another, shaking off the clinging soda sludge before settling down. At noon, the heat of the sun is almost beyond endurance, but the parents incubate their egg for 30 days. Those birds that are released from incubation duty fly off to feed. It's the only time in the year that they travel in daylight. Flamingos normally fly over dry land at night, and by now this part of the pan is more land than water. Returning birds find noticeable changes as the remaining water rapidly disappears. By now, the first chicks have hatched and are forming creches, but they're still far from being able to look after themselves, and time is running out. Conditions change rapidly now. The last of the water is almost gone, and the colony is marooned in a cloying sea of mud. Small groups of adults remain as guides. They fly low over the chicks, encouraging them. They must be ready for the ordeal to come. Ahead lies the cruelest of migrations, a 50-mile forced march across one of the most inhospitable places on Earth. The pan is now an oven, its bed baked to a soda crust in the blinding heat. Where recently blue waters stretched to the horizon, there remain only these strange telltale signatures imprinted in the soda that show where the flamingos have been feeding. Some 15 miles out, a tiny pool has briefly fortified the living island of 40,000 chicks. From now on, there will be no more water until they reach their destination, still several weeks away. Horizons melt in the furnace heat. Hot winds race across the pan, sending clouds of stinging salt crystals thousands of feet into the sky. For the chicks, there is no turning back. Marching north into the void, they must cross the Magadi-Gadi or die. The pace is beginning to tell. Fatigue pulls the close-knit ranks into long, straggling columns. At midday, the surface temperature is 65 degrees centigrade. Yet still the chicks struggle on, step by painful step, across the jagged soda crystals. The sun is merciless. Already it has claimed its first victims. The rest struggle on as best they can. The exodus of the lesser flamingos has left their breeding place deathly quiet. Yet among the deserted nests and addled eggs, there is still life. This chick has hatched too late to join the migration. Its parents still fly in at night to feed it, but the innocuous-looking mud is laced with crystals of caustic soda. Once mired in the quick-setting mix, its fate is sealed. Even the water here is lethal, a supersaturated soda solution that crystallizes on muddy legs and sets rock hard, layer upon layer, in cement-like anklets. There is no escape. Even birds old enough to fly are dragged down as surely as if they were shackled with a ball and chain. Caught up in a waking nightmare, these chicks face a hopeless future. The nesting place that gave them life has now become a prison, and each night their parents still feed them, innocent accomplices in a trial of endurance with only one outcome. In the north, the long march of the flamingos is almost over. Miraculously, more than 3/4 are still alive. Nothing can stop them now. With mounting excitement, those old enough to fly take to the air as they approach their journey's end. Incredibly, they have made it. Here, there is water. Drinkable water. For most of these birds, it's the first taste of water in their lives. In a remarkably short space of time, even the weakest regain their strength. These fragile birds have shown an extraordinary resilience by surviving this amazing journey. They will soon join the thousands of adults in the shallows. Yet, even here, the water cannot last. Soon it too will dry up, leaving nothing but a mirage in the hot desert air. Then, one night, the flame birds of Magadi-Gadi will fly off as mysteriously as they came into the vast African night. During the making of this film, many young flamingos died, victims of the crystalline anklets. Normally, natural history filmmakers don't interfere with their subjects, but on this occasion, Tim Liversedge and his crew could not help but act to save this baby. It was a tricky job. The soda solution had set to a consistency almost as hard as cement. It had to be chipped and prized off, and they had to be very careful not to damage the young flamingo's fragile leg. Then the bird was released into the seemingly inhospitable waste. And Tim Liversedge was able to keep sight of that single bird. It did manage to join up with the other young flamingos on their long march. And so, in all probability, it survived.